G'day. Now, what if the Buddha had never lived? What if Jesus had never lived? Muhammad, Lao Tzu, Plato, Confucius. These people have had a tremendous influence on the way our society's developed, what we think. Religions have been developed because of these individuals. Well, what if you lived in a world where none of these people had ever lived? Uh, no one like them had ever lived. And you're in a situation where you want to understand yourself. You want to, well, what am I? What am I? How would you go about doing that? That's the hypothetical question I want to put to you, because I think it's an important question. How would you go about trying to understand yourself if you had to rely completely on your own attempts? Well, I think you'd pay a lot of attention to everything that you experience. And you'd pay a lot of attention to everything you think, and you'd question, you'd wonder why. What is that? Why is that? You'd be paying attention. And, would you get yourself all worked up over it? No, you'd probably, be quite relaxed about it. That would be the natural approach. Now, we don't live in a world like that. We live in a world where all these people have existed, and they've created, or what's been derived from their lives, um, multitudes of differing opinions and traditions. Now, there's a human physiology and there are human um, instincts. The average person, most people, um, they find a partner, they have kids, they're devoted to their kids, they want a peaceful life, they want a secure life. Um, we have a society where we get together and we mutually support each other, but it's not that simple, as you know. So, trying to understand, well, what are the deeper things now? There's a whole lot of things that have been discovered by these traditions. Uh, Primarily, what's underneath all these mystical traditions is this experience of the energy in the body, human, and there's various traditions that have um, developed. Got Taoism and Tai Chi, with, developing the Chi and understanding how the energy moves. You've got yoga and some exotic forms of Buddhism that have discovered the Kundalini. Now, if you were um, on your own and you were paying attention, well, maybe you'd find these things too. But the difference would be, without these traditions, you wouldn't have someone else's interpretation of what it all means. You wouldn't have this concept of it's enlightenment or uh, going to a higher realm or whatever. It would just be something that would happen to you and you'd wonder about it. Now, in the presentations that I've done, trying to offer um, my understanding of meditation, I've done my very, very best to avoid dragging any philosophy into this. And there's a reason for doing that. I think I'm doing you a favour by not doing that. These various traditions, they're kind of mental prisons. Depending on which culture you're born into and what influences you have, and they're very strong um, influences that come from religion, they shape the way you look at the world, they shape the way you interpret it. Now, they're very diverse, these things, and they don't agree with each other, and they become a mental prison. I think that in many respects, for those people who uh, do want to delve as deeply as they possibly can into, well, what is life? What am I? Well, Um, it's a task to get rid of all this stuff out of your head. all these different influences, because it preconditions any kind of experience that you might have. A lot of these mystical traditions, which uh, they've been with us forever, and they probably will always be. Uh, I've made the point in previous videos that there's a human physiology, and there are quirks to that physiology. And you go off and you do things that are extreme practices, you trigger some of these physiological quirks. I mean, there is an energy system in the body. It's not understood particularly well, but it's there. But the interpretations that are put to it are really just social interpretations based on some kind of historical development, traced back usually to some prominent individual who was a big noise in their community, and it still resonates down through time. I think if you were thrown into that situation where you're completely reliant on yourself and there were no traditions, well, the way you might approach things would be you'd be paying attention to what happens to you. You'd be scrutinizing every experience carefully. You'd be paying attention to your own mind, and you'd be paying attention to your dreams, and you'd be pondering these things and wondering about them. You wouldn't necessarily be jumping to conclusions just because some experience stands out or some experience, uh, comes along that is startling. You wouldn't then jump to some conclusion about it immediately. It'd be, well, what was that about? That's how you'd approach it. And speaking as a person who spent a lot of time meditating, I've had a lot of conversations over the years with other people. And there's a bit interesting pattern that I've seen develop that long-term meditators, you get in conversation with them, and we agree about a lot of the basics pretty early, but as you get deeper into the topic, you find more and more disagreement. And uh, that was a puzzle for a long time. Why do people, the deeper you get into it, the less they agree? And it occurred to me, well, there's a good reason for that. No two people's minds are the same. Your experience and who you are is individual to you. That if you're going to explore who you are, well, you're a unique thing. You're a one-off. You know, the problem with these traditions is that uh, you're supposed to conform, and one size fits all. Well, that's obvious even amongst in within these traditions that they splinter all the time. It doesn't matter which group starts up or how long the tradition is. It always develops into splinter groups. There are hundreds of denominations of Christianity. There's possibly as many as hundreds of different kinds of Buddhism. Well, if there was one answer, why so many different opinions about it? Well, I think the thing is, although we share a common physiology and we're all much the same, we're not identical. We're all unique. And, your experience, your sensitivities, uh, they're unique to you. Your life story is your own, and it's a one-off. Wanting to understand everything about yourself, well, the real authority is you. You're the authority. So, in my attempt to, discuss meditation and offer some ideas of how you might go about it, I've done my very best to avoid introducing any kind of philosophy. I mean, I've studied whatever I come across, I've looked into, and I'm aware of all these different things, and I could spout a narrative that might be pretty convincing. Well, I've tried not to do that. I've tried not to influence you. tried not to condition your experience. And I've offered an approach which is meditation without telling you what to think. Um, Meditation is actually a very simple thing. It's just paying attention in a relaxed way and developing that as a habit of mind. Um, the more relaxed you are, the more you notice things, and the more relaxed you are, the deeper you see into things. And if you want to understand yourself, that's a good way to go about it without um, having all these preconceptions that you've got to sort of sort through. Uh, there are a lot of things you can learn from all these other people's experience. But if you decide to join these groups, well, uh, you're volunteering for some kind of mental prison, in my opinion. And it's not meditation. There, uh, there are a lot of belief structures that we don't know really where they came from. Um, just as a bit of a tangent, it's become clear in the last 20, 30 years that our recorded history is very incomplete. They're finding whole civilizations that existed before the Sumerians, before the possibly before the Egyptians, very advanced cultures that suddenly have turned up, that we've just suddenly discovered were around. We didn't even know they existed. Well, we don't know what influence those cultures had on the ones that came after them. All that's been lost. Uh, the uh, the way we look at life, the way we think, has been deeply, deeply influenced by the people who came before us. But that's just their experience. It's something to pay attention to, but it's not an authority. The person who's the authority of your mind is you. And if you want to understand who you are and what you are to the best of your ability, there's no guarantee you can ever get to the bottom of it. But if you want to understand, well, you're the authority, and you need a way to sort of discover who you might be. Now, in everything that I've done, in all my previous videos, I've described the same thing really in as many different ways as I possibly could think of. To explain it to as many different outlooks as possible. But it's very, very simple. Uh, we've got our conscious mind and we've got a subconscious element to that, which we want to see more deeply into as part of understanding ourselves. And there's a simple way of doing that. It's relaxing and noticing, relaxing and noticing. And over time, that becomes a habit and becomes an easy habit. And gradually, you see more deeply into yourself. You understand what drives you. You see what's common within yourself, with other people, and what isn't, what's different. Meditation, if there is any value to it, it leads to a greater self-awareness and a greater self-understanding. And I don't think that anything other than knowing how to go about it is required. So that's, I named this channel The Heretic's Guide to Meditation for a reason. A heretic is somebody who thinks independently of authority, thinks for themselves. And if you really want to get to the bottom of yourself, well, that's what's required. You've got to stand on your own 2 feet, mentally speaking. You can learn from everybody else. Everyone's got something to offer you. But no one's going to give you the answer to yourself except you. So I kind of think that's important. I made this video because I think that that's actually a very important thing to get across to people. Maybe I'll see you later.